Hello everyone, Dennis Chang here. Happy New Year. If you guys heard, there was a massive earthquake in Japan. I got a lot of messages, thank you very much, but I'm doing fine. Actually, what happened, the earthquake happened in the northwest coast of Japan. I did not feel anything in Tokyo, but in the northwest coast of Japan, it's pretty bad. So it's not a good way to start the year in Japan. So for today's video, I didn't plan on doing this, but I was watching videos of other YouTubers, teachers, jazz guitar teachers, to see what they were talking about and things like that. And I stumbled upon a video that was very, very interesting. It's actually not going to be the topic of today's video, but in that video, the YouTuber is talking about a Grand Green solo and how to analyze the solo. And so I decided to check out that solo for myself, and I discovered other things. So I'm going to talk about that YouTuber next week. Today, what I'm going to talk about is something that I noticed in this Grand Green solo. It's a tune called Green Street. And I played one of the choruses in the intro. The tune is called Green Street, and what you just heard me play in the beginning was one chorus of Grand Green from that solo. So it's not an improvisation, it's me interpreting that solo. And I wanted to talk about certain things in this solo that I think is very important. As you guys know, in many of my videos, I talk about the importance of fundamentals. Ultimately, that's what I want my YouTube channel to be about helping people develop certain fundamental skills that will allow them to, progress faster and get access to the quote-unquote advanced stuff easier, if that's the kind of stuff that you're going for. Because as I've said in previous videos, nowadays with marketing, by the way, I can do a video about music business one day if you want, about the whole psychology behind marketing and all that stuff. I've kind of looked into it. The way music education marketing works is to somehow try to attract you through fancy words by trying to sell you advanced concepts that most people are not ready for, and you never progress, and they're releasing every year or every generation the same advanced topics just to get money from people. And very few people are talking about real fundamental things, and I guess I want this channel to be about that. So we're going to talk about phrasing, and this is something that here I'm going to be talking about in kind of intellectual terms, so that hopefully it awakens something in you that will allow you to listen to music in a new light, and so that you can absorb this this concept. Because even though I'm intellectualizing it, I will be intellectualizing it, I would rather you not try to think of it in intellectual terms, but I want you to start listening to music in this new light and try to absorb it naturally, because it should be felt. It's all about the feeling. Speaking of which, I have a course dedicated to this topic on SoundSlice. You can find it in the description box. I think it's called Swing Phrasing, something like that, Jazz Swing Phrasing on SoundSlice. I don't remember the names of my courses anymore, sorry. But you'll find it if you go to my SoundSlice page. Link in the description box, or maybe I'll pin it in the comment. By the way, you will also have this solo transcribed on SoundSlice, so check it out. A number of things are happening in this solo. And what I talk about in this course, it applies to a certain era of mainstream jazz, because nowadays jazz doesn't really mean anything. It means different things for different people. But it applies to jazz from the beginning, the history of jazz, until about, let's say, still today, but I guess around the 60s, 70s, things start to really branch out in jazz. And there are certain forms of jazz that have very little to do with what I'm talking about today. And what I'm talking about has to do with, I guess, straight ahead jazz. So players like straight ahead jazz, but even swing musicians, Louis Armstrong, Coleman Hawkins, Lester Young, Charlie Parker, Red Garland, Joe Pass, Wes Montgomery, Grant Green, obviously. I'm using Grant Green as my example here. Barney Kessel, Kenny Burrell, all those great players. So hopefully you get an idea of what I'm talking about here. It does not really apply so much to more like fusion-y guitar players who kind of play standards as well, like, well, Scott Henderson, Frank Gambale and everything. Those are all wonderful players, but they're playing in kind of their own unique idiom. So I just want to clear that up, okay? So this stuff is rarely talked about because most people, like I said, they feel it. They don't really think about it. But I've put a lot of thought into it to help people who cannot feel it. So hopefully I can help you to feel it. There are certain rhythms that are extremely common in jazz that you need to know. And from the history of jazz, you have to understand where, I guess, the history of the United States in the late 19th century, early 20th century, particular in New Orleans, we have these mix of cultures. And in particular, there's this rhythm called the tresillo. I think it's written Tresillo. It's a rhythm that goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. I just did 2 cycles. Let me just do 1 cycle. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. It has a kind of like a Latin kind of vibe, doesn't it? So what does this have to do with swing music? Well, a lot, because it got somehow mixed with jazz music, and it got disguised in different ways. I talk about this rhythm in detail in my course, so I'm not going to really explain it again here. But basically, what I can do is take away the third stroke. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, I just do 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's what we call a Charleston rhythm, based on the song Charleston. Dun, 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 dun. See that rhythm? Okay. Then of course you can play with the timing. So basically it's one note that's on the beat and the other one is syncopated. And with that syncopation, in the original tresillo, it's straight in the middle, but you can tweak it around to get different effects. And this rhythm, you're going to hear it in the playing of all the masters. It might not be played the way I just showed you. It might be disguised. But all the players that I cited earlier, you're going to hear this rhythm everywhere if you know how to look for it. And that's what I want to teach you here. So this rhythm, let's just take a note G. So that's part of the tresillo rhythm. This is the Charleston. But you can disguise it in a number of ways, and I talk about this in detail in the course. But basically, it does not have to be just this. 1, 2, 3, 4. It can be this. 1, 2, 3, 4. It can be this. 1, 2, 3, 4. It can be this. 1, 2, 3, 4. See, the first note and the last note are always in da, da, but in between you can put different things. But now let's take away the last hit of the tresillo, but let's fill in the middle gap. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's fill it in again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's take away the last note. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a rhythm. And then let's take one more away. 1, 2, 3, 4. So check this out. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. C jam blues. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. You see? Lots of Charlestons hidden in just the melody of C jam blues. You're gonna find this rhythm disguised in so many different ways. So if you ever start to learn music by ear, if it's hard for you to feel this out, take a pen and paper or use a computer software and make transcriptions. Write things down, write the rhythms down, and see where you can find them. Or go to my Sound Slice page in the free section, you have a lot of transcriptions of different players, and you're going to see this rhythm quite a lot. So it's very, very important that you learn how to internalize this. I'm pretty sure that most of these masters are not even really aware that they're playing those rhythms. They just feel it because of the environment that they grew up in, that they were involved in, and all that stuff. And ultimately, that's the best way to learn it. And if you check out the solo that I played in the beginning, you will see exactly that in the Grand Green solo. The Tresillo rhythm, as well as the Charleston rhythm, used but always disguised. Check this out. And there's some things about the phrasing, like starting on beat 1, starting on beat 2, starting on the end of 4, like already 2 and 3 and 4. Ba ba. Ba ba. And at the end, that's beat 4. Ba 4. And then you have this very interesting rhythm where it starts on beat 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So starting, like choosing where you place the notes, starting on beat 1, starting on beat 2, starting on 3, beat 4. And what's very important in jazz music, at least in 4/4 music, swing music, it's to understand that 1 and 3 form one unit and 2 and 4 form another unit. And then 1 and 2 are like opposites. So I thought what I'd do now is play the same solo for you a little bit slower, but with, first of all, a bass drum on 1 and 3 and a hi-hat on 2 and 4. So you can hear the contrast. Then I'm going to do the same solo, remove the bass drum, and you hear just the hi-hat. So that's just like putting the metronome on 2 and 4. And then one more time, removing the hi-hat, just the bass drum, so you can hear the effect of 1 and 3. And how the notes rhythmically are interacting with either the 1 or the 2. So you heard that? It makes such a huge difference where you put the accents, or where you start your phrase, where you end your phrase. Beat 1 and 2 have a completely different feel, don't they? So speaking about this Charleston rhythm, it usually happens on the 1 and the end of 2, or on the 3 and the end of 4. Try to comp a blues this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Get used to that. And now try to do the same thing. Start it on the 3. Yeah, on the 3 and the end of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. And you'll notice that I think I talk about this in the course, but this doesn't sound as good as this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Try it out and check out my course, of course. So even starting on the 3 will change certain feelings. So traditionally it starts on beat 1 or on beat 3, give it a try over a backing track. But just because that's how it's traditionally done does not mean it cannot start on other beats, namely 2 and 4. It's the same rhythm, but it will have a completely different effect. I urge you to give it a try to, just to feel the effect for yourself. But if you want to hear a recording where actually that's done, check out Wes Montgomery's recording of this tune called Night Train. And you'll hear the band, the orchestra, the horn section in the background doing that Charleston rhythm starting on beat 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, bop, 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 bop. Check it out. Besides the Tresillo or the Charleston, there's also the idea of superimposing 3/4 over 4/4. It sounds way more complicated than it actually is. And just for a brief moment, Grant Green actually does that at the end of the solo, from the end of the first chorus going to the second chorus. So I took a little bit of liberty there to exaggerate that 3/4 over 4/4. But basically 3/4, take a phrase that's in 3/4, something like this, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. So you see, you play a phrase like this, a pattern that's in 3/4, and play it over and over a 4/4 track. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and... So the accents are shifting every time. Let's try this over a backing track. So you feel this effect. This is something that you see a lot in jazz music as well. In the jazz music that I described, it's in a lot of compositions. It don't mean a thing. Again, I talk about this in my course. I talk about a lot of things in my course. It's a really good course about phrase structures and things like that. So you should really check it out. Let's just talk about the melodic content of this solo. It's actually very interesting. It's going to be the topic of next week's video, actually, but I'm not going to go in detail right now. But basically, you'll notice that sometimes, well, quite a lot of times, Grant Green is not playing quote-unquote the changes. He knows exactly what the changes are, but he is playing vocabulary, idiomatic blues vocabulary over a blues. And from time to time, he will play the changes. So it's a mix. There's no rule about when you should play the changes, when you shouldn't play the changes. And when you don't play the changes, usually in the context of a jazz blues, it's so that you can play idiomatic blues vocabulary. I made a video about this, I think a year or two ago, about the jazz blues, the history of jazz blues. You check it out. It's free. It's on YouTube somewhere. The solo starts this way, which is just blues vocabulary. And then, yeah, typical blues vocabulary. But then he plays the changes here. And this is very interesting. This is an interesting phrase. Might be wondering, hey, what is this? Is this a C minor? Actually, no, it's an F minor. Well, I don't know what Grant was thinking, but it's a high likelihood he's thinking F minor. So, so F minor to B flat 7, and then to E flat. So then back to blues, and playing the kind of B flat minor pentatonic kind of idea over E flat 7 works really well. Particularly these notes. You can add a few other notes, of course. Instead of playing A flat, you can play the G natural. Okay, and then he continues with some more blues, and then towards the end he starts to imply changes. So G7, he plays the G7 chord. And then he goes back to kind of idiomatic blues vocabulary. So when you have like a 2-5, 1, so C minor F7. It's typical to just play actually stuff based on a B flat chord. Try this. Sorry, my singing is a little bit out of tune, but just a B flat triad. Well, just the 2 notes of a triad. But the way I resolve it, I resolve on this, even though I'm still playing B flat on the C minor, works. And on the F7 as well, it creates a kind of a F sus chord. Even though the comping player might be playing just F7. And then I resolve here. We're going to talk about that next week. So it's a way of not playing the changes or kind of superimposing the 1 chord over the 2/5 chord. So it's very interesting in that way. So we'll talk about the melodic and harmonic content next week, because in that video that I saw from that popular YouTuber, great player, but he says certain things that are actually not correct, and I want to talk about that. That'll be the topic for next week. Anyway, thank you very much, guys, for checking out this video. Check out that course, or check out my books on Amazon where I talk about harmony, how to really visualize the fretboard. Lots of good stuff. I really thank you guys for your support, and I wish you guys a really, really happy new year. Oh, one more thing. I suggest that you guys learn to record yourself. I was I'm not very, but I tried to be as deliberate as possible with my time feel. I think there are a lot of talented musicians, guitar players out there who know all sorts of things, have amazing technique in the sense that they can play really fast and really complicated things, but their timing is subjective, but in my opinion is not consistent. I think consistency is the key. I tried to be very deliberate in my time feel when I played the solo. I tried to be more or less with the band, but never ahead. If I'm ever ahead, maybe it's just a hair ahead, usually when I play more faster lines, virtuosic lines, which I did not do at all. But generally I tend to be with the rhythm section, provided that the rhythm section is together. It is the case in this backing track, or maybe just a little bit behind. I think personally anyway, for this style of music, it works really, really, really well. It depends on the style of music. It's a signature as well. But I feel, especially those of you who play gypsy jazz, a lot of gypsy jazz players' sense of time is a little bit erratic and sometimes over the top, rushy, and sometimes it can be good. It can be a good, exciting effect, but sometimes it can be too much. So that's my thought of the day, I guess. But a lot of my personal heroes, they play the way that I just described. Rocky Gresset, Birelli Lagren, lots of players. So keep that in mind.